First off, let me make an apology. In a video a couple of weeks ago, I turned around and I said that Woody lived in Norway. He doesn't, he lives in Sweden, and I know he lives in Sweden. So why I said he lived in Norway, I have no idea. It's probably the first thing that came to my mind. It's probably a slightly fast barred Freudian slip, if that makes any sense. And those of you who don't know who Slarty Ardfast is, should go and look it up in the sci-fi mythology. A very famous character. Designed the fords around Norway, you know. The second thing, before we get going, is about my weight. Somebody made a comment on the channel. I am going to respond to you directly because I thought it was a great comment about my man boobs. And yes, I have put on quite a lot of weight in the last year. And I know I have, and I know my health has suffered because of the weight gain, involving a couple of stints in hospital. So hopefully that's gonna subside. Now the divorce is over. I'm still waiting for results from the divorce, I might add, but the divorce actually, in terms of all the legal work, is now done. Just waiting for the judge to make the decision whether I'm going to be a pauper or I'm going to be okay. Let's see what happens. Anyway, moving on. One of the things about running the YouTube channel is you tend to get lots of comments about videos. Well, hopefully you get lots of comments about videos, and if you get comments about videos, that means people are actually watching what you're saying. And I get my fair share of comments, which is great, and carry on leaving comments against videos, because your comments are sort of drive the content that sort of comes up on the channel, if you know what I mean. I've got loads of stuff I need to do. I've said that before. I'm just eking out the time to be able to do that amongst the other things that are going on. Anyway, some people have also emailed me directly and asked me things, and in the last week or so I've had 3 emails, 3 different people asking me the same thing. So there must be something going on why they're asking about studio speakers. Now, this is one of my studio speakers, and it's rather a heavy beast. And it's probably quite heavy because it's got its own transformer, and it's powered. You have to put mains power into it, as you can see around the back of this thing. And this is rated at 140 watts. Now, I don't need 140 watts in the studio, but I do need a good set of speakers in the studio, or what I consider a good set of speakers. So these are my speakers, but I'll come back to these in a minute. And you can also see there's a set of white speakers behind me, which also are the same brand as this black speaker. So if I pop that back down there. So when I started out, probably like a lot of you guys, I was using hi-fi speakers, and I went through the realms of, you know, plugging it into the hi-fi as it was, and then buying better speakers and a better amplifier. And when I was running my first studio many years ago, I think I was running Morden shorts because they were compact. They were about this sort of size, which is sort of what was the forerunner of what is now the Morden Short M10. And a Yamaha natural sound amplifier, and I thought that was an absolutely cracking combination of amplifier and speaker to give me a nice clean crisp sound, and it worked really well for me for a number of years for what I was doing. And then I went to a friend's house, and whereas I thought I had a good combination for a nice, good, clean, wide range of frequencies, what I actually found from going to my friend's house, who at the time had just bought a pair of, and I can't remember what they were, studio monitors, proper studio monitors, and they were both powered, and this is going back some years now, so you know, technology has moved on quite considerably since then. But the sound he got out of these studio speakers was so much cleaner than the sound I was getting out of my Morden shorts. And I thought, as I said, I thought I had a good combination at the time. But I just heard the studio monitors, and it just sort of made me feel that I needed to go and get something different, because what I was trying to do, his setup was better balanced for me than my setup was, if that makes any sense. So after a while I invested and I bought my first set of studio monitors. Now, I think I had a set of Jammo monitors at the time, and I've been racking my brains to remember what I bought as my first set of monitors, because I know I bought them second hand, and I can't remember what I bought. I can remember what they looked like, I just can't remember what brand they were. I should do, but I can't. It just eludes me at the moment. So what are the differences between a set of hi-fi speakers and a set of studio monitors? Well, the biggest difference between a set of studio monitors and hi-fi speakers is where the sound is meant to sound best. So studio monitors tend to work on a concept called near field. And what near field is effectively saying within a few feet, depending on your speakers, you're going to get the best sound. So if you're sitting like here and playing this workstation, you'll notice I've got two speakers either side, and roughly the near field sound for these is more or less about where I'm sitting. So they sound best about here. They're not designed to project sound into a room. They're designed to project sound onto the musician or the engineer who needs to listen to it. That's what they're designed to do. So the sound that they project here, although most people won't be able to hear it, is different to the sound they project over there, for argument's sake. You still hear the music, but you'll hear a different tonal quality. So that's the first thing. Whereas hi-fi speakers are really designed to project to a room. They're designed to fill a room with music or amplified sound, should I say, because obviously use hi-fi speakers for speech as well. The next thing is studio monitors are designed to give you a fair representation of the sound. They're not designed to jazz it up or hide imperfections. They're designed to give you the imperfections, because that's how you improve the quality of the sound, by knowing where the imperfections are and being able to adjust the sound balance or quality or mix or whatever it happens to be to improve those imperfections. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to get the best sound for the piece of for the work you're doing. Hi-fi speakers, on the other hand, are designed to give you a good sound wherever. They have they both come from two different stables. So the key differences are about the target audience. Studio monitors, musician, engineer, studio work. Hi-fi speakers, general room, open space, give a good representation of the sound that's come through. So you quite often hear people say about studio monitors, they present the sound raw. There are several other big differences as well. Pick this thing up. Now this thing actually weighs about 8 kilos, and it's quite heavy. And that's because this is considered an active speaker. What do we mean by active? Well, actually what we mean by active is that this has its own internal power source, like I showed you earlier on. There you go, you can see the power going into it. As do these two behind me, they're also active speakers, right? So each one is independently powered. What it means is that they quite often have two amplifiers in them, or more amplifiers, should I say, depending on the usage and the type of speaker you've bought. Now these are both of these speakers are two-way speakers, as in you have a high frequency piece at the top and a lower frequency piece at the bottom, or a general speaker, if you like. But you can get three-way, four-way speakers for studio monitors, but you pay an appropriate price for that sort of setup. So this has, I believe, 2 amplifiers in it. One amplifier drives that top speaker, one amplifier drives that bottom speaker, to the total of 140 watts of power. These are rated much lower. I think these are rated about 55 watts because I don't need that much power here, but in the studio I do need I need a fair amount of power for bass. Okay, bass is where the power always goes. The top range, the higher frequencies, you have very little power there, but if you have low frequency LFOs going off, you need quite a lot of power to actually be able to handle the low frequency. So that's the first difference, active versus passive. If you've got a passive speaker, you need an amplifier to run it, and obviously you then have to go for a studio grade amplifier, which quite often are quite expensive. You can use a hi-fi amplifier, but you suffer with a hi-fi amplifier from what a hi-fi amplifier is designed to do. I mean, you could go for one of the higher end amplifiers, but again, you will still suffer from the same issue that a hi-fi amplifier is designed to make the sound good, not sound raw, as it might say. The second thing about these things is they run active crossover. So what do I mean by active crossover? So inside the unit itself is a piece of circuitry that actually splits the frequencies out. And because I've got a high frequency speaker and a low frequency speaker, inside this, that active crossover will split out the high frequencies and send it up to the high frequency speaker and push the low frequencies to the low frequency speaker. And this has a very crude, but as you can see the top here, there is a button for high frequency and low frequency, and that allows me to adjust by a couple of decibels down and a decibel up what frequencies I want to go into each one of those speakers. I tend to run mine flat. I'm not an aficionado being able to hit that tonal pitch. I'm not that good, so I tend to run mine flat. But I do know people who run theirs a few dB out one way or the other. And again, the more you pay for your studio monitors, the more adjustment capability you get. In fact, I've seen these are actually discontinued at the moment. These are the 6s. The 7s, I've seen some demonstrations of the 7s. On the back you actually have a frequency response graph going and telling you what frequencies are coming through, which is all well and good if you're actually looking at the back of the speaker. If you're not looking at the back of the speaker, it's a complete waste of time, but there you go. So they have an active crossover, and that crossover is splitting the frequencies between the two. Now typically in hi-fi speakers you still have a crossover, but unless you're powering each separately, and I have seen hi-fi setups where you actually can power each speaker individually, and you effectively have a number of amplifiers putting power to those and an active crossover at the amplifier end. If you're not running that sort of setup, then typically what you'll find is that you have a piece of passive circuitry in the speaker that is performing the filtering or sending the frequencies to the various speakers in that speaker. Okay, it's not a very efficient way of doing it, and you lose power by passing the signal through a passive filter. Not a lot, but you still lose power because it has to get its power from somewhere to do its job. The other thing about studio monitors is studio monitors are designed with studio work in mind. So therefore, if you look on the back of this, every time I lift this up, and I push that to the camera, what you can see on the back of that is there are 3 inputs. All right, the 2 at the bottom are balanced. All right, which basically means that they are grounded. There's a common ground between the speaker and the mixer or the source. And if you're running balanced, especially over a distance, you tend to get a much cleaner sound because you get less noise loss because the ground is grounding the signal. It also allows you to run unbalanced phono connections onto this as well. So I have the option, I can run both. I can run either a balanced connection, which I tend to run in the studio, or an unbalanced connection, which is what I tend to run here. These are unbalanced. These are actually plugged in unbalanced, purely because I haven't got a cable here at the moment that will allow me to run balanced, even though this synthesizer will run balanced. It's probably due to the fact that the previous synthesizer that was in place here couldn't run balanced. Okay, so that was the simple reason why. But over a longer distance, typically on a balanced cable, you get less noise, so less signal loss and less noise on the cable, or less chance of noise being introduced. Which is why you tend to find many high-end outfits are running balanced connections. Okay, that's the reason why. And you have things like DI boxes that change your unbalanced signal into a balanced signal for running across to the mixer. So that's another reason why studio monitors are better in the studio. And then we come on to some other things. So hi-fi speakers are designed for music, predominantly are designed for music, okay? And they're designed to operate over a certain set of frequency response ranges. What I've found with hi-fi speakers in the studio, especially if you're working with LFOs, is the low frequencies tend to get distorted because a hi-fi speaker can't cope with those frequencies. Where studio monitors are designed to cope with low frequencies that rumble and fart, and not distort effectively. So going back to why do I use KRK? I use KRK predominantly because I think KRK are one of the best speakers on the market in terms of bangs for your buck. That's my personal opinion, having listened to a number of them and having listened to a serious set of price ranges. I went and I listened to a number of different brands when I was buying, when I started the studio up again. Now these are probably about 4 years old now. As I said, they've been discontinued by KRK. They've been replaced with the 7s. Which are actually a better speaker than the 6, I have to be honest, but I'm not going to spend any money on the 7s because these suit me down to a T. So when I went and listened to a number of different brands, and I listened to all the standard brands that you probably would be offered, I thought in my own mind that these were the best ones for me, and I bought these off the back of that set of listening, that listening process. Now these weren't cheap, but they weren't expensive. So the 5s behind me, as I said, I think they're 55 watts. I haven't actually gone around the back and looked at them. I think they're 55 watts a piece. There's 55, so 110 watts between the two, and they were under £100 each, so £200 for the pair. These, on the other hand, are 140 watts, and I think I paid sub 200 for them, so 200 for each side, and I've got 2 of them in the studio. So they're not cheap either, but what I would say is buy the best you can afford without breaking the bank. Go listen, buy the best you can afford. So what I would say is these are a very important part of your setup, because if you send something that is sub-quality out to whoever, quite often you get one chance to impress. And if your speakers are telling you that it's good, but the tape is telling you it's not, I used the word tape, oh good God, that's really showing my age, isn't it, when you used to cut demo tapes and send them off to record companies. And for those of you who don't know what a tape is, it's a little cassette thing like that. In fact, I might have one around here. Oh yeah, look, there you go. You don't know what a tape is. There you go, there's a tape. Probably somebody on the channel who doesn't know what a tape is. Born in the realms of CDs. Yeah, so you need to get the best quality you can, and the only way you do that is by making sure you have a good quality sound source in your studio. And these are good because obviously you don't need an amplifier, separate amplifier, and technically you don't need a mixer either. You can actually plug your workstation directly into the back of these, just like I've done behind me. So that's the first thing I say. Go and listen to them. I'm going to plug Anderton's now, because in Anderton's in Guildford, they actually have a room full of these things that you can go down and listen. You can take your sound source down, so you can take your keyboard, your guitar amp, your CD, whatever it happens to be, something you know sounds, has the sound you want on it. Take it down, go into their demo room, and they will allow you to play through different speakers until you find the set of speakers that you think are right for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is you'll be surprised how much different speakers sound. Now you would have thought every speaker sounds the same. No, it doesn't. There is a definite tonal quality difference between certain brands and certain manufacturers. So, you know, obviously, make your own decision up on that. I mean, my decision was KRK. Okay, that's my decision, and I've been perfectly happy with this. The second thing I do when I buy speakers or buy any equipment, amplification equipment, is I work on the rule of 75. That's my rule. I don't think it's an industry standard rule, but it's my rule. I work on the rule of 75. And what that means is whatever I'm buying is 75% of what I know. Sorry, what I need is 75% of what I'm buying. Now, why do I do that? Well, I've worked in the sound and music industry for long enough to know that when you start overdriving stuff, as in driving it flat out, at some point things go wrong, and when they do go wrong, they go wrong spectacularly. You blow speakers, you blow amplifiers, all kinds of things like that. Now, amplifiers and speakers are designed to work in a specific range. Okay, and what they're expecting is to see, although they don't see it, but they're expecting to see a sine wave, because that's how the speaker moves in and out. The more power you put in, the more it pushes it out. The less power you put in, it pulls it back. So that's how sound is pushed into a room by a speaker, or sound is created by a speaker, by that sort of magnetic movement, if you like. Now, at some point, the speaker reaches its maximum travel. It can't go any further. And at some point, it reaches its maximum recall. It can't go any further that way. And when a speaker is at those two extremes, effectively the coil is not moving, and you end up damaging the coil of the speaker. Okay, so they start to fuse at that point because it's running too much power through. So that's from a speaker's perspective. You want to try and keep your speakers within that range of movement. In order to do that, what you need to do is make sure your amplifier can't overdrive your speakers. Now, I've been involved in scenarios with jumped up little Herberts many years ago, where they walk in going, I'm driving a 1,000 watt speaker, and I've got this, you know, and you look at the speaker and you realise the speaker's only rated for 500 watts, and they've got this thumping 1,000 watt amplifier, and they're driving the nuts out of this speaker, and they can't hear the fact that the speaker is howling and popping and all kinds of stuff. And eventually, you know, before too long, the whole thing goes bang, because the speaker just gives up and the amplifier gives up. Because when you're running the speaker flat out, the amplifier will also have problems, because it will get feedback at that point. So it gets resistance on the drive-in signal. So amplifiers, I tend to make sure that amplifiers are within, you know, their maximum output is around about 75 to 80% of the speaker output. So therefore you can't overdrive the speaker. Then on the flip side, when you look at the amplifier, you need to understand exactly what it is you're trying to achieve and make sure that your amplifier has 25% headroom over the desired sound. So you're building redundancy or overhead into each one of the components as you go up. That's what I call the rule of 75. So what amplifiers tend to do is if you try to overdrive an amplifier with a signal, it will reach the top of what it can. So if you think about it's doing that, if you overdrive an amplifier, that sine wave slowly starts to go up and the top bit becomes flat rather than that. Getting into the physics of this now, but I'm not sure I'm explaining it particularly well. But if you get to the point where it's running flat, effectively what it's doing is running a constant current through the speaker that not only damages the amplifier, it damages the speaker as well. It also means your sound coming out of here is horrible. It really is horrible when that starts to happen. So what you're looking for is a speaker, an amplifier that can drive a speaker where the speaker is rated more than the amplifier and the amplifier is rated more than what you want. That way you're never going to drive into that clipping zone, okay, which is what you want, because that way you maintain clean signals. So when you're looking at a set of studio monitors, if you think you need 100 watts of power, which is what I thought I needed, you buy a 140 watt speaker or a 140 watt enclosure, which is what this is. That's kind of the way I do it. I don't go looking for wattage per se, but I know I need a certain amount of sound, and I know also I want to be able to deal, because I'm dealing with keyboards, and keyboards quite often you'll have high frequencies and low frequencies. I want to be able to deal with those low frequencies and the high frequencies that are coming off my instruments. So there we have speakers, or predominantly my speakers, and the reasons why I chose my speakers. Anyway, until next time, enjoy yourself. It is a nice Sunday out there. It's the British Grand Prix this afternoon, so I shall be settling down with a few beers to see if Lewis Hamilton can win again. Alright, bye bye. Remember, hit that like button if you like what you saw. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified about more rants, more mailbag, more questions and answers, and more videos about this sort of stuff when it's loaded to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.